Hello everyone, welcome to my channel, and if you are new here, then hello, my name is Rain. I wanted to talk about something pretty significant that's happened this month, but before I jump into it, I want to say thank you so much for all the support on that last video. I was so overwhelmed in the best way, by the response that got. All the comments were so sweet, and hearing everyone share their experience with anxiety, and also being so supportive and saying hey, you can do this. And then also there was somebody who gave me the confidence to use the matches. It was very heartfelt to me, so thank you so much. So much has happened to me since I've graduated from college, and it has thrown me through a very difficult process of adjusting to the world outside of school and what it's like to actually enter adulthood. And I have learned so many lessons, but something that I was not prepared for that happened this month was losing my best friend, and in that also cutting off someone extremely toxic to me, all within the same week. So after college, something that I was struggling with personally was the loss of a social life. I had a really good friend group in college, and I would spend almost every day around people. And before college, I was a pretty introverted person. And I reflected on that so much. I prefer to be alone, but I don't like being lonely. And when I was surrounded by people constantly when I first started college, it was a bit overwhelming for me. But then I learned how to adapt to that, and I learned how to give myself boundaries, and I started to recognize my own behaviors more, and I got even more familiar with myself, and learning when I needed to say I'm done being around people right now, I'm gonna take a step back. And there were some moments where people didn't react to that very well, and those people aren't really in my life anymore, so it's not the biggest loss. And also adjusting to college life, I learned friends from high school that you would talk to every single day, you would eventually grow distant with. Now, of course, you could try to keep that friendship going as long as both of you were putting in the effort to keep that friendship going from distance. But there were a lot of friends after high school, it was okay, well, this person's not going to be in my life anymore, but there's no bad blood. And at the same time, there was also friends that I don't talk to them every single day like I used to, but I know if I went to go hit them up, it would be what's up? And it would be just like old times, because that is the relationship that we have with each other. Distance from each other isn't seen as a negative thing. And in fact, I think the distance that I have with some of my old friends makes us closer when we do see each other again, when we do talk again. Something so valuable that I learned from that was that you don't have to spend every second with a person giving them details about your own life. And of course, when you're communicating with someone or just interacting with anyone in general, it's just nice to listen and hear what they have to say too. That sounds so silly to talk about. I guess what I'm just trying to say is listening is very essential in keeping relationships stable, because you can't just talk about yourself the whole time. Once I started to realize I had some people in my life that only really cared to talk about themselves, and they didn't really care to appreciate what I had to bring to the table, it became increasingly clear to me that some people didn't value our friendship the same way that I thought they would. And when I grew distant from those people, not because I was intentionally doing it or because I was intentionally trying to ghost them, but just because life events happened and I wouldn't get to see them on that weekly basis, I started to realize I was the only person trying to put in the effort. I was the only one trying to reach out and make these things happen. And when I stopped doing that, it got so peaceful for me that if that person wanted to show up and wanted to be there, we wouldn't have to have an argument about it. But at the same time, I made like a mental note for myself, like, don't put in more than what you have to. Like, and you don't need to make this into a big deal unless it's like personally negatively affecting you. I think a lot of people, when you're not that close with someone, you have this sensibility to recognize that like friendships come and go and not all things are going to be consistent in your life. And sometimes friendships are only meant to last for like a certain period, and when they've served their purpose in your life and that friendship is gone, it doesn't have to be a dramatic exit. And as long as you're taking care of yourself physically, emotionally, mentally, you can easily overcome like losses like that. And at the same time, it's not even a loss. You were still given some kind of gratification at the end of the day. When it started to become increasingly clear that my best friend and I were entering a very toxic stage of our friendship, I wasn't sure what to do about it, because I've been in relationships where it was very toxic, and I reached out to people trying to figure out like, hey, is this actually happening? Am I being manipulated by this person? Like what do I do? How do I fix this relationship? And the very good friends that I had when I was in those very bad relationships would urge me to take care of myself and to let go of that person. It's not like they told me like break up with him, but they, quietly, subliminally motioned for that. You know what I mean? Like, and it was supportive. And at the end of the day, looking back at those bad relationships, I'm like, I am so glad that y'all helped me like figure that out. Because if I didn't have that support, I'd probably still be stuck in those relationships, hating myself and hating my life and not knowing what my purpose is. And also like the self-respect that I have now would not be here without having those lessons from those losses. And like I said before, like, it's not always a loss. You still gain something from a significant moment in your life. And that doesn't mean that I'm like sitting here like wishing that those relationships could still be in my life. It just means I'm like, you know what? Thank you. Next. like Ariana Grande said it best. Like, thank you, next. Like, I don't want to give it more energy than what it needs. It's so pointless to keep letting somebody have power over you and making you feel like you have to constantly prove that you're worth more than being reactive and defensive. I say that because that is the point that my friendship started to reach with this best friend. I started to see this person surrounding themselves with people who, to put it lightly, I'll just be blunt. This person surrounded themselves with people who were very self-centered and only thought about themselves, or they had ill intentions with this best friend. That made me upset because, this was my friend. I didn't want to see them being treated unfairly. I toyed around with how to like express this to this friend one day, and we had a really big conversation about it. And they were like, okay, well, this is my life. I'm gonna make my decisions. And I was like, you know what? That's fine. That's fair. But like, I'm still here to support you. I just don't think this is good, Then this person started going down a path where they started going after more malicious people. Like, they started putting themselves in situations that they wouldn't have put themselves in before. They started criticizing me for choices that I would make when in other times, like, they would have you know, would have been playful, like, girl, like, why'd you do that, you know, but they never, like, hated me or resented me for it. This resentment started to grow where they wouldn't let me talk about, like, my success because they were like, okay, well, that's great and all, but don't forget, like, you did this one time. And it was very confusing for me because why would you do that? Why would you do that? It started to make my self-worth crumble. And I wanted desperately to prove to this friend that, like, I wasn't this person that she was making me out to be. She started getting romantically involved with someone who I think any other normal person who was around the situation would see that this romantic interest clearly had ill intentions with this person. They were breadcrumbing her. They were manipulative. They weren't keeping their promises. They, like, played with their emotions. They would take the fact that they knew that my friend, like, liked them in a romantic way, and I just, like, I'm sounding insane when I'm talking about it, but, like, they would take that fact and, like, kind of throw it in the air and make them jealous over certain things. And it was very personal. And when I finally sat this friend down and told them, like, this is what I think, this is why I don't like it, this is why I'm, like, here telling you about this, because this isn't good and I don't want to see you get stuck in this cycle. It's so depressing to watch, and I'm sad having to, like, express my opinions and you're telling me that, like, I'm the delusional one. This friend didn't take that well. We got into a very explosive fight, and that's that. And that was so hard for me to go through because I wasn't sure how we were going to make it up. But before I even had time to process that, another extremely toxic person in my life who I had been trying to cut off, but there were, like, certain things happening in my life that made that very difficult. That's a whole nother story in itself. But there was someone who, it was overdue. This person needed to go. And this is a person in my life that I don't even want to say, like, you know what, like, they're gone and it's fine. This is another example of a person that it's like, it's good for me to be upset about what this person did to me and others, because I need to know that I will never tolerate that kind of treatment again. And then I started to reflect on these situations that were happening. And I started to reflect on a lot of moments that I had with the best friend. This whole entire time I had this perception that I was like, I can't believe, like, my best friend is thinking about me in this way. I can't believe, like I'm trying to support her, I'm trying to help her. And I went back and I looked at so many conversations that we had through text, and I realized that she shared so many conversations that I had with that toxic person. Their traits were starting to overlap, and it was, like, wild to me. I was starting to see things that I had never seen in our friendship before. My point is, I was being disrespected on the daily by two people very close to me, and I didn't even recognize that disrespect until that band-aid was ripped off from me. When I was given the space to reflect on that, I realized every moment I had with them wasn't about being supportive or caring for each other or existing with each other. It started to be about fighting as a currency of friendship. And that was scaring me because it made me realize that the effort that I was putting in wasn't seen as supportive effort. It was seen as criticism and backlash and an excuse for this person to come at me and express their own anger. This applies for the best friend and this toxic person. I think The scariest part about reflecting on the two scenarios was when I was like looking back in the text messages, I noticed that I would foolishly tell the toxic person about something traumatic that happened to me, and they would use that against me, and they would kind of like use that as like a little like throw out, like, oh, didn't this happen to you? And then that would get me worked up, obviously, because it was a trigger. And then we would like talk about it, and of course I'd react in an emotional way. And then this person then had an excuse to be like, oh, you're kind of making me uncomfortable with the way that you're talking. Even though it was like, yes, I could have learned to self-regulate, but at the same time, if you're supposed to be my friend, why are you going out of your way to trigger me? That makes no sense to me. And then this pattern would happen with this best friend too. Like, she would use the problems that I was having in my own life to be like, well, it seems like you only want to talk to me when you're having a problem, and you don't want to talk to me about other things. But when I tried to talk about other things, she would start responding to old texts that had been left unreplied to about like the problems that I was having. Or anytime that I wanted to make quality time with her, she would say that she was spending that with this toxic person in her life, the toxic romantic interest. And I would take a step back and be like, okay, well, you said you wanted to do what you wanted to do. I've already said my opinion about it, so you can do that. And then she would tell me, like, she learned that the only way we could talk is if we were having toxic conversations, which upset me because all of my conversations were made in an effort to strengthen our friendship and to make things better for the both of us, to establish boundaries. But that wasn't seen that way. That was seen as argumentative and me being defensive and me being controlling. And looking back, there's a few times where I probably could have worded how I felt better. But at the end of the day, my feelings were disregarded and my own personal issues were weaponized against me. I've done so much reflecting on what I want out of this life for myself. And one of the biggest things that I started to recognize after graduating college was that I wanted peace, and I wanted to be respected, and I wanted to be able to advocate for myself in a healthy way. I have always been in environments that have forced me to be defensive because of the people that I've been surrounded by. And one by one, they have left. And a lot of those, I'm grateful that they have left me. But I still have people in my life that are good foundations, healthy foundations, good friendships. And without those friendships, it would have been so difficult for me to get to this place. I know I'm kind of repeating myself right now, but there's this perception that like if you're losing people constantly, then it means that you're the problem. And I think there can be some truth in that. It involves a lot of like inward thinking and like getting to know like, hey, are you actually doing something problematic? But looking back, I realized like the only reason why I haven't been able to surround myself in healthier environments is because I became attracted to unhealthy environments in the same exact way that the best friend did. And that is such a sad feeling because I do feel like at this point, there's no turning back from this. The decision has been made. I cannot be around this person anymore. The environment that we grew up in together is not the same environment, and our friendship has served its purpose. This person has met their time with me, and it's time for us to go our separate ways and grow from our traumas, heal from them, and to also heal ourselves. And there's a possibility in the future we could reconnect, and maybe it would be great. But in this current timeline, this person is not supporting a healthy environment. All I've wanted was peace. And now that two of the most toxic people that I had in my life are gone, I do feel a very strange sense of peace and relief that I don't have to constantly prove myself every day to people who didn't really care about my well-being. These people never cared about my success. Anytime I tried to explain my success or to talk about something good that was happening to me, they immediately had to make it about themselves. And that always sat wrong with me. And it wasn't like we were both sharing good things that happened. It was just like one of those like passive aggressive things where I'd be like, oh, well, the new job is finally starting to work out. And they would make it so negative where it's like, oh, well, I'm glad you have that going for you because this is happening to me, blah, 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 blah. And, you know, I had to put my happiness aside to make them feel better. And once I did that, and I was able to be like, oh, and by the way, this thing happened, this person would use that against me and be like, oh, if everything's going so well for you, then why are you doing that? Why did that happen? And it never felt right. I have realized that the way for me to find the peace that I'm looking for is to find peace with myself and to start listening to what I need. And that's going to be the way that I advocate for myself. Too much of my life has been spent being a people pleaser, and it has led to like really, really unfortunate situations where my life could have been a little bit better, maybe. And I wouldn't have to have like created this constant cycle where I feel anxious all the time. And as someone who I already have an anxiety disorder that makes it really difficult for me, I have allowed mistreatment to occur for so long that interacting with anybody in any kind of social situation makes it so difficult for me to actually connect with someone now because I'm overthinking every little thing that we're doing. I'm wondering like, oh, did I say that in the right way? Like, oh, are they going to be mad at me? Blah, 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 blah. And now that I've been spending more time with the healthy friendships that I have, and I'm so grateful that I have, I realize like when I'm around those people, I can let my defenses down. The anxiety spike is still there, and I'm still working through it. But I realize like somebody who actually does care about you isn't gonna go out of their way to make you feel bad for having a personal struggle. If anything, they're gonna be so understanding about it, and they're gonna say like, hey, that's okay, like, you know, like, it's chill. I'm not mad at you for that because that's what you're dealing with. That doesn't affect me. Losing two people that I was around almost 24/7 and now being like alone with just myself has been so rewarding and so lonely at the same time. And when I see that I'm not the only person that's going through these struggles, I feel a little sense of like relief, but not because I'm like, oh yay, other people are suffering, but like it's so nice to know that like if other people can get through it, then so can I. And you know, if other people can make a good life for themselves, I can do that too. And that life doesn't have to include people. It's my life. I need to do things for me. My purpose on this earth isn't to make life convenient for others. It's for me. So thank you again. And I hope this video was entertaining. I don't know. But yeah, life's weird. Thanks, guys.